All right, so today we're diving into something pretty big.
Definitely big.
Yeah, we're talking about what a second Trump presidency could mean for the world, especially with
what's going on.
with what's going on in Ukraine.
Yeah.
So we've got three sources to kind of help us unpack this whole thing.
Okay.
We have an article from the American Conservative.
Right.
We have a news report from huanquiki.com, and then we have a piece from the Associated Press.
Okay.
These articles kind of give us a glimpse into Trump's potential foreign policy, plans to engage with Putin, and his overall goals for America's role in the world.
Yeah, this is a fascinating question, and I think we're going to learn a lot.
Definitely. So the big question we're grappling with today is, could Trump's presidency actually bring an end to the war in Ukraine?
Interesting.
And if so, what would that piece even look like?
Yeah, how would that?
Let's dive in.
Let's dive in.
Okay, so let's start with the American Conservative article. This one focuses on the European energy landscape and argues that Europe's reliance on Russian energy is not a weakness, but rather an economic reality.
Well, that's not something that you hear very often.
No, not at all.
In the mainstream media.
No.
Very interesting take.
It really is.
Okay.
So it challenges this whole narrative that dependence on Russian energy is inherently dangerous.
Right.
It even goes into some history, like talking about how Germany built its economic strength partly on a steady flow of inexpensive Russian gas.
Wow.
Yeah. And it even says that this energy relationship played a significant role in the entire European project.
Framing it as the foundation of the European Union? I mean, it's
a bold statement.
Yeah, there are so many other factors. I mean,
of course.
Politically, socially, culturally.
Yeah.
But the economic ties are undeniable.
Absolutely.
Okay, so they're saying that's the basis of their strength is this energy relationship.
Exactly. So then the article addresses the concern that Russia might weaponize its energy exports.
Okay, yeah.
To kind of hold Europe hostage.
Right.
But it really pushes back against that narrative.
Interesting.
Saying that Russia wouldn't risk the financial and reputational damage of breaking these long-term contracts.
Okay.
Just for political gain.
I see. Yeah, because they make a lot of money.
They do. They benefit enormously from having that market. So it is a really compelling economic argument.
It is.
But, you know, the interplay between economics and geopolitics is rarely straightforward.
Oh, it's
complicated.
It's a complex dance.
Yeah. And while they may not resort to like outright energy blackmail, there's always that potential for manipulate, supply and demand, pricing, that kind of thing.
Yes. Now, the article acknowledges that Russia's invasion of Ukraine has disrupted everything.
Yeah.
Prompting Europe to try and wean itself off Russian energy.
Right.
But here's where it gets interesting.
Okay.
It suggests that this approach might be hurting Europe more than helping it. That's a bold statement.
It is. So what specific harms do you think they're referring to here?
Well, I'm thinking economic recession, social unrest, dependence on other less reliable energy sources.
Yeah. It argues that this energy divorce has left Europe weaker, both economically and strategically.
Interesting.
So then they propose a potential solution.
Oh, okay.
Which is also the title of the article, Buy Nord Stream 2.
Whoa, that's something else.
So Nord Stream 2.
The pipeline between Russia and Germany that was halted.
Right.
Because of the war.
Exactly. So the author thinks that Trump might actually purchase this.
Wow.
Becoming the middleman.
Okay.
For Russian gas flowing into Europe.
Right. So essentially what they're saying is that America could benefit.
Could profit from this.
From the flow of Russian gas. And the second thing is that U.S. ownership could give Washington some control.
Okay.
Potentially limiting Russian influence.
That's a fascinating take.
It is.
It's unconventional.
Very much so. But how do you think the European allies would perceive this?
I don't know.
Would they see it as a solution?
Right.
Or an unwelcome interference?
Yeah. How would this impact transatlantic relations?
Good question.
So the author frames it as a win-win.
Okay.
A way to end the European energy wars while serving both U.S. and European interests.
But there could be a lot of unforeseen consequences.
Definitely. It's definitely a risky gambit.
All right.
With a lot of potential consequences.
Yeah, we need to explore this further.
We do. We need to keep an eye on this.
Okay, so we talked about the American Conservative article.
Right.
What about the report from huanqi.com?
Yes, so this one claims that Trump has always instructed his aides to set up a call with Putin within days of his inauguration.
Interesting.
Yes. And it states that the purpose of this call and a possible face-to-face meeting later on is to discuss ending the war.
Okay.
This aligns with Trump's previous calls for negotiations.
Yes.
And his criticism of continued U.S. aid to Ukraine. So this is a significant shift in diplomatic strategy.
Absolutely.
Because the Biden administration has been very cautious in its engagement with Russia, focusing primarily on supporting Ukraine's military efforts.
Right.
But Trump seems to be signaling a totally different approach.
Interesting.
The article even mentions that Trump's national security team has been preparing for this call for weeks.
Wow.
Weeks. So that level of preparation suggests very deliberate strategy.
Right. Not just impulsive.
Not at all.
He's really thinking this through.
So what do you think his overall foreign policy strategy might be?
That's a great question.
I mean, does he prioritize a quick peace settlement?
Even if it involves concessions to Russia?
Right. Or is he aiming for a more nuanced approach?
And how will Putin respond to this?
Yeah.
Will he see it as genuine or a chance to exploit divisions in the West?
It's a high-stakes diplomatic dance.
It really is.
So I'm interested to see how that all unfolds.
Yeah, me too. That'll be interesting.
So let's move on to our third source.
Say it.
The Associated Press article.
All right.
This one takes us in a different direction,
Okay.
exploring Trump's overall vision for America.
And what is his vision?
And it's quite a sweeping vision.
Okay.
Bold and ambitious goals, both domestically and internationally.
Wait on me.
Okay, so for starters, he talks about territorial expansion.
Okay.
And not just minor adjustments.
Like what?
He's talking about acquiring Greenland from Denmark.
Greenland.
Greenland.
Wow.
And he's interested in regaining control of the Panama Canal.
So he wants to make America bigger.
Yeah, it feels like we're going back in time a little bit.
A little bit.
To a time of grand ambitions and a more assertive approach
Okay.
to global affairs.
All right.
And then there's space.
Space. Okay.
He has this vision for manifest destiny in the stars,
Wow.
aiming for a Mars landing.
That's a pretty big goal.
That's huge.
Okay. So what do you think?
So we're talking about potentially reshaping the global landscape, challenging existing alliances, and redefining America's role in the world.
So what would be the consequences of this?
Yeah, I mean, could it lead to greater instability and conflict? Or could it usher in a new era of American dominance? I guess those are the questions we'll be grappling with
I think so.
as we continue this deep dive.
Right.
What steams out to you so far?
So from these sources, what I'm seeing is the scope of his ambition.
Scope, right?
It's bold, expansive,
Yeah.
and potentially disruptive.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And his willingness to engage with Putin
Yeah.
really suggests a major shift.
For sure. A major
What's the
shift.
foreign policy?
That could have major implications
Yeah,
for the war in Ukraine and global stability as a whole.
exactly. We're seeing hints of a more assertive America, one less concerned with global alliances,
Okay.
more focused on pursuing its own interests,
I see.
even if that means challenging the existing world order.
All right.
We've only just scratched the surface. But I think we're starting to get a clearer picture
A little bit. Yeah.
of what a second Trump presidency could mean for the world.
Yeah. And that's what makes this so fascinating
It is.
and so important.
I think so.
You know, we're exploring potential scenarios,
Right.
different perspectives,
Yeah,
and trying to make sense of a very complex and rapidly evolving landscape.
exactly.
Yeah, it really feels like we're standing at a crossroads.
Yeah.
These decisions
Yeah.
could have huge repercussions
Yeah. For years to come.
for years to come.
For sure. So it brings us back to our original question.
Right.
Could Trump's presidency actually bring an end to the war in Ukraine?
I think it's definitely possible.
Okay.
His willingness to engage with Putin, his skepticism about continued U.S. aid,
Right.
and his leverage
Yeah.
in the energy market all suggest that he
yeah.
might be open to a settlement.
But what would be the price of peace?
Yeah.
Would Ukraine be forced to give up land?
You know?
What about the sanctions?
What about the sanctions? Would those be on the table?
Right.
Those are some really tough questions.
Yeah.
It's impossible to know exactly
Right.
what a settlement would look like.
Yeah.
But based on his past statements and his willingness to accommodate Putin,
Yeah.
I think it's reasonable
Okay.
to assume that there would be
Concessions.
concessions.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the American Conservative article talks about this idea of linkage-making diplomacy.
Right.
using that energy relationship
Okay.
as a bargaining chip
I see.
in peace negotiations.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so using the potential for normalized energy relations between Russia and Europe as a bargaining chip.
Okay, so he could say, look, we can all win here.
Right.
Russia gets its market back. Europe gets its energy.
Right.
And America gets to be the peacemaker.
Right. But from Ukraine's perspective, that could feel like a betrayal.
It could.
Right.
Like they're being pressured to give up land for a deal that benefits others.
And that's the tension in any peace negotiation.
Exactly.
Balancing pragmatism with justice.
It's a huge challenge.
It is.
Like a Rubik's Cube.
With too many sides.
Like way too many sides.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so what might a worst-case scenario look like?
A worst-case scenario might involve Ukraine ceding territory to Russia,
Okay.
perhaps even recognizing Crimea's annexation.
Wow.
In exchange, they might get a ceasefire.
Okay.
Vague promises of security guarantees.
Okay, so what about the sanctions in that scenario?
Well, the sanctions would likely be lifted.
Okay.
Putin would claim a victory.
Right.
He'd be emboldened.
Yeah, he'd see it as a sign that the West is weak and divided.
Exactly, and that's why we have to look at the long-term consequences.
Right, not just the immediate term.
Not just the immediate.
Of a peace deal.
Right.
Okay, so is there a path where a Trump-brokered peace could actually lead to a more stable Europe?
It's not impossible.
Okay.
It would require careful diplomacy and a commitment from all sides.
Right.
You know, a more optimistic scenario would involve Russia withdrawing its troops.
Okay.
Ukraine keeps its sovereignty, territorial integrity, and a peacekeeping force deployed.
So sanctions in this scenario.
Sanctions would be gradually lifted as Russia demonstrates a commitment to peace.
A vision of a more integrated Europe.
Yes.
With Russia as a partner.
A partner, yeah.
Okay, so even in this more optimistic scenario, there are still significant challenges.
Absolutely.
Rebuilding trust between Russia and the West.
Yeah.
Addressing grievances. Ensuring Ukraine's long-term security.
It's a very delicate issue.
It's a diplomatic tightrope walk.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One misstep could be disastrous.
It really could.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today.
A lot of ground.
From energy politics to Trump's vision.
It's been a whirlwind.
It has
information
so much.
And ideas.
I think it's so valuable for our listeners that we're not just presenting one perspective.
Right.
We're pushing one particular agenda.
We're giving them the tools.
We are.
To make up their own minds.
Exactly. That's what this deep dive is all about.
Yeah. Critical thinking. Thoughtful analysis.
Yeah.
Open-minded engagement.
These are issues that affect us all.
They do.
Absolutely. So it's not just Ukraine we need to think about, right?
You're right.
This AP article talks about other things on his agenda that could have ripple effects.
Yeah, it's all kind of connected.
Yeah, you can't really separate domestic and foreign policy.
Definitely not.
So like immigration, for example.
Okay.
He's talking about really tightening border security, limiting refugee admissions.
Wow.
Even potentially challenging birthright citizenship.
Those are major changes.
Huge.
With the potential to create a lot of waves.
I mean, we could see a resurgence of the rhetoric we saw in his first term.
The divisions surrounding immigration, yeah.
And it's not just rhetoric either.
No.
It could be legal challenges. It's pushback from other countries.
Yeah, it's a global issue.
Really is.
Yeah.
And then there's the economic angle.
Okay.
He wants to bring back those tariffs.
The tariffs on imported goods.
Yeah.
I see.
He says it'll protect American jobs.
Right.
Lower prices for consumers.
But won't it have the opposite effect?
That's what I'm wondering.
Didn't we learn from this last time?
I think so.
I mean, tariffs often lead to higher prices.
Right.
Retaliation from other countries.
Trade wars.
Exactly. Trade wars.
So are we looking at a more isolated America? Economically and diplomatically?
It's hard to say because Trump's so unpredictable.
He is.
In his foreign policy approach.
Yeah, he likes to break with convention.
Right. He likes to forge his own path.
Shake things up.
Exactly.
So it's really hard to predict what's going to happen.
We're in uncharted territory.
It's exciting.
A little nerve-wracking.
Yeah, for sure.
But exciting.
Yeah.
To see how it all unfolds.
I think we're on the cusp of a new era.
Yeah. But the rules haven't been written yet.
Not at all.
A lot depends on how other countries react.
Right. Will they try to accommodate him or will there be more tension and confrontation?
Yeah, that's the big question.
It is.
It's what makes it so fascinating.
That does.
A little unsettling, but fascinating.
I think so.
Yeah.
We've given our listeners a lot to think about.
A lot.
Yeah, energy markets to peace in Ukraine to America's role in the world.
Big topics.
Big stuff.
Yeah. Deep dive.
It is. I want to emphasize one thing.
Yeah.
Think critically about this.
Absolutely.
Don't just accept these ideas.
No.
Challenge them. Research them.
Right.
Form your own conclusions.
Exactly.
That's what it's all about.
The whole point.
We're giving you the tools to ask the right questions.
The right questions.
Yeah.
And think for yourself.
Because the world's changing.
It is rapidly.
And we need to be able to navigate these changes.
Absolutely. With an informed and critical eye.
Okay, so final thought here. Given everything we've learned about Trump's ambitions and his approach to foreign policy,
Yeah.
do you think we're on the brink of a more peaceful and stable world order?
Oh.
Or are we headed into more uncertainty and global realignment?
Those are the big questions.
They are.
The choices we make in the coming months
Yeah.
will have a huge impact
On everyone.
for the whole world.
And on that note, I think we'll wrap up this deep dive.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everyone.
And keep exploring.